Hey, welcome to Summer Connect. My name is Nate Ardle, and I'm the National Director for this program. And I'm coming to you from outside Philadelphia tonight. And it's kind of fun because we have people in 4 different locations making this happen tonight, from New York City all the way to the Los Angeles, Orange County area. So that's really fun. And as we go throughout this summer, we're actually going to have people coming to us live from all around the world. So that's going to be really fun. We're glad you guys can be a part of it with us this summer. And when I think back to my time in high school and college, I really wish there would have been a program like Summer Connect. I remember the summer after my freshman year of college at Ohio State. I went home for the summer. And after having such an amazing year of spiritual growth during my freshman year, the summer at home was incredibly disappointing. I was at home, I was working for my parents, and I was taking classes at a local college, which is all kind of lame, honestly. It was just a really dry time for me spiritually, and I didn't have much spiritual encouragement that summer. I was apart from my friends. I wasn't connected to them throughout the summer. There wasn't even the ways that we can all connect with each other now from across the country. Those things didn't exist back then, and I just had a really difficult summer. And because of that summer, I actually struggled into my sophomore year. I came into that next school year, and just having had a really dry summer, it was a difficult year for me. And a lot of it was because I didn't have a great summer with the Lord. And I wish I would have had something like Summer Connect. And unfortunately, that was the dark ages. There was no internet, at least for the masses. And so there was really no way to connect with other people around the country or to do anything like this. So I'm really glad that the technology has caught up with our ability to be able to have you have an opportunity to connect with the Lord and connect with each other this summer. And we have a great 8-week program for you this summer, and we're really glad you get to be a part of this. Now, from our end, this broadcast is kind of the biggest thing that we're doing to help you have an experience this summer. But honestly, when we think about this program, the broadcast is not the most important element in you having a significant summer. The most important element of you having a significant summer is, first of all, you taking steps to walk with Jesus yourself and to do that with other people. That's really what the most important thing is for you to take active steps to spend time with Christ and to do that in the context of other people. Now, many of you are watching this tonight at a hub location where people are gathered together to watch this together. And it's our hope that these hubs would be a great place for you to have fun together and to also have a chance to connect with the Lord and to be on mission together this summer. Now, a lot of you are probably watching at home on your own. And if that's the case, I'm really glad you're a part of what we're doing this summer. Some thoughts for you of how to maximize your summer. First of all, you might actually be closer to a hub than you realize. So if you go to cru.org/summerconnect and take a look at the map that's at the bottom of that page, you can take a look at where you live and see if there's a hub that actually might be within driving distance. And so if you have an opportunity a few times throughout the summer to drive and be a part of that hub and to engage with some other people, that would be awesome. So see if you can do that. If that's not possible, and honestly, what we desire for all of you is to be involved in a local church. So find a good local church that preaches the gospel, that talks about Jesus, and engage there and even be involved there and serve there this summer. That would be fantastic if all of you could do that this summer. But apart from all of that, certainly please try to stay connected to your friends back at school this summer. Stay engaged with them through phone calls, text messaging, social media. And what I would encourage you to do is be very honest with your friends about how you're doing during the summer. It can be really easy for us to kind of put a front on and just kind of like make it seem like everything's going really well. But we want you to be real with the people that are closest to you. So be open and vulnerable with people this summer. And I think if you do a number of those things this summer, this will be a significant summer for you. Now, Summer Connect has always been about being a catalyst for your spiritual growth. And that's my prayer for you this summer, is that this would just be a catalyst for you spending time with Jesus and being engaged in his mission. Now, to take us forward for the rest of our time tonight and throughout the rest of the summer, I'm going to turn it over to our host, which is Charlotte Crabb. And she is coming to you from Brooklyn tonight. And Charlotte's going to be the host for most of the rest of this program throughout the rest of the summer. So I'm going to turn it over to Charlotte and let her take it away. Go for it, Charlotte.
Well, hello. I'm so excited to be with you guys today. Had a little technical difficulties there, but as Nate said, my name is Charlotte Crabb. I live in Brooklyn now, but I just moved here in August, and I'm actually from the greatest state in the Union, Texas. I've been on staff for 10 years, which, if you do the math, that means I came on when I was 7. Just kidding. But I'm really glad to be with you all. I've been on staff for 10 years. Part of that time was with the Impact Movement in Orlando, Florida, and then a little of that time was also in Cape Town, South Africa. And currently, I serve with the high school ministry here in Brooklyn. So over the next few weeks, we'll be together doing our connection time, as the name suggests. And I think summers are just really special. When you think about summertime, it's really just a time where you can kind of focus in on the things that are most important to you. I think that's why we have so many different summer camps and just conferences during the summertime, because we have time to figure out, well, what are the things that are most important to us? And how can we invest in them? And so, if you're watching this today, I'm assuming that one of the things that's most important to you is your relationship with the Lord. And so, over the next few weeks, I hope that these times together will be refreshing, renewing, encouraging, and challenging, and really allow you to have a time to really just connect. So, speaking of connect, we want to stay connected via social media. So, I want you to pull out your phone. I'm grabbing mine now. Pull out your phone right now, and we have a number of different social networking, social media channels that we want you to stay in touch with us through. So I'm going to read these off really quick, and if any of these are ones that you are on, go ahead and add yourself. Take a quick selfie, and I'll also give you a hashtag that you can use to kind of tag that picture. So for Facebook, that name is Summer Connect with Crew. Again, Summer Connect with Crew. For Twitter, that handle is at Summer Connect 17. For Instagram, for those of you who are on the gram, that name is Crew Summer Connect. All right. And that hashtag, that universal hashtag that you can tag all of your pictures with, is hashtag Summer Connect 17. So we really want you to stay connected. We want to hear what God is doing in your life. We even want you to kind of be talking about it on Facebook and telling your friends about what you're learning, some of the different challenges that you're going to be having over the summers, and really just kind of get the word out there about Summer Connect. Like Nate said, summer can actually end up being a very isolating time, and we want you to stay connected and also get your friends connected. So today we have an exciting evening planned. Bob Foose is with us, and Bob was actually the director for Summer Connect last year. Bob's been on staff for about 25 years. He's been married to his wife Jill for 20 of those years, and he's led the summer missions trip, in Ocean City, New Jersey for 15 years. And a fun fact about Bob is that when he was in college, he had a band called the Affordable Mimes. So, Bob, we're looking forward to hearing you, and you can take it away.
All right. Well, thanks, Charlotte. So fun to meet you. So fun to have you here hosting things. And I'm going to take issue. I don't think Texas is the greatest state in the union. Us Californians would argue with that. Everything's big in Texas, so there you go. I guess maybe you're going to win that battle. But I'm coming to you live from my home office in Orange County, California. Contrary to popular belief, that beautiful wall behind me is fake, so you might see it move a little bit. We've got the air conditioning on here. I just thought that would be better to look at than the closet that's right behind it. So, hey, this is super fun being with you guys. It's fun even looking at the chat and seeing people, introducing themselves, saying where you're from. I saw somebody's from Hong Kong watching, so that's pretty cool. So it's, really neat. And I want to give a special shout out. Hopefully you guys are able to get online, but got a text today from my friend Leo Malarkey, who helps to lead our ministry in the Inland Empire. They said they were gathering to watch this as their last weekly meeting of the year. So hi to all my Inland Empire friends, really wherever you guys are watching. You made it. It's summer. Are you excited about that? It means you get to go to the beach, you get to hang out with friends, you get to, eat ice cream and just enjoy summer. Like, this is the time that Olaf was looking forward to. And so now here we are in summer. which is really exciting. And some of you have been counting down the days, haven't you? You know, you've been thinking about, okay, finals are coming. Then I've got a few more days, and then summer's over. Some of you are about to start summer school, which is a bummer. Some of you maybe already gotten into your summer job. My first summer after my freshman year, I went back home to my hometown in Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. Shout out to any Wisconsin folks that are on the broadcast tonight. But I went home to my hometown and I worked at a restaurant. I started off as the dishwasher and then kind of moved up to the salad boy, where I stocked the salad bar. And then they let me cook a few things. Was helping out with the fish fries on Friday night. It's what I had to do to make some money and enjoyed my time and hung out with my friends around that. So I don't know where you are coming into your summer, but we're going to talk tonight as we kind of kick off Summer Connect and kick off our 8 weeks together. We're going to talk about what does it look like to not just survive your summer, but really thrive. And I love the things that Nate was talking about at the beginning, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. But to kind of get into it, I wanted to share with you one of my favorite one of my favorite survival stories. And it's the story that was featured in the book Into the Wild by John Krakauer. Maybe some of you have read it. It was actually made into a movie, I believe, starring Sean Penn. And what happened was it was on Tuesday, April 28th of 1992, that a 24-year-old Christopher McCandless ventured deep into the bush of the Denali National Park in the Alaskan outback. He told his friends that his intention was to simply live off the land for a few months. Well, he didn't prepare very well. The only food that he had in his 25-pound pack was a 10-pound bag of rice. That's what he intended to subsist on for the time that he was in the Denali National Park. He didn't take a map with him. He didn't take a compass with him. He left no word with his family in Virginia where he was going and when he'd return. He didn't prepare very well at all. Well, the next 2 months were difficult, but Chris survived. And so on July 3rd, a few pounds lighter, Chris decided it was time to venture back into civilization. So all Chris had to do was cross the Teclonica River and make a really insignificant walk back to the highway. But once he got to the river, he found that a lot had changed since April. You see, back in April, they were just getting over winter, and so the river was mostly frozen. It was easily crossed. But now in July, all of that had thawed, and it was running big and cold and fast. And Chris stood at the bank of this 75-foot channel that stood between him and the highway, and he had no ability to cross that. So Chris decided that he'd wait it out. He decided that he hoped the water level would fall, and eventually he'd be able to cross the river. And he found shelter in an abandoned school bus, and then he went and searched for food. Sadly, because he didn't prepare very well, because he had no guidebook, he hadn't watched Bear Grylls or anything like that, he had no way of knowing that the roots that he was foraging for food, which closely resembled edible ones, were actually quite poisonous. And since he had no map at all, he had no way of knowing that just a quarter mile away from where he had attempted to cross the river was actually a hand-operated tram, which would have easily brought him across that raging river. He was also unaware that just a mile from the abandoned bus that he had taken shelter in, there was a park ranger station, this lodge that was fully stocked with food. He had no idea because he didn't prepare very well. And so on September 7th, 132 days after Chris McCandless walked into the woods, 6 hikers happened to cross the abandoned bus that held his body. He didn't survive. And so here you are at the start of your summer. And like Christopher McCandless, you've left the civilization of your campus. You've left the warm, that womb, if you will, of your campus ministry even, and you've ventured into the woods of the summer. And the question is, are you prepared to not just survive, but to really thrive this summer? See, Christopher McCandless, he didn't have plans to die. He didn't have plans that bus would be his tomb, that bus would be his coffin. He didn't plan to eat poisonous berries or starve to death. But here's what we know. We know that without a how-to, our want-to won't happen. See, we can have all the best intentions in the world, all the best desires in the world, but unless we couple those things with a concrete plan, unless we're prepared for the things that we're going to face, that want-to probably isn't going to happen. See, we're going to have all the dreams that we want in the world, but if we don't have a plan to accomplish it, all that All that they remain are just simply dreams. So tonight, here's what I want to do for the rest of our time. I just want to walk you through a process. And you're going to get time actually in your discussion groups, if you're with the hub, to kind of talk through your plan, talk through some of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. And if you're not at a hub, I would encourage you maybe to post some of these things on social media, or just spend some time alone with the Lord. Grab a cup of coffee with Jesus later tonight or tomorrow and talk with him over these things, and do some planning about your summer. And some of you may be thinking in the audience, you might be thinking, Bob, you don't know me. I'm just not a planner. And besides, Bob, planning isn't spiritual. We just want to let the Spirit lead us, don't we, this summer? Well, here's what I'd say about that. We obviously definitely want the Spirit to lead us this summer. But make no mistake, planning is very spiritual. All planning is simply asking God to turn our want to into a how to. It's about being intentional with our dreams and our visions that God has given us for the world. I wasn't a science major, a biology major in college. I was a comm major, and I just finished my master's in leadership. But what my science friends tell me is that our bodies are 70% water. And one thing I do know about water is water takes the path of least resistance. And that can be true of us. Unless we've got a plan, unless we've got a how-to in place, we're going to tend to take the path of least resistance. And that's why we need a plan. So here's what I want to do. I want to give you 4 steps to planning for a successful summer walking with the Lord and making a difference this summer. So I'm going to talk about a couple of different passages of Scripture. Feel free to open up to those if you want to. If not, just jot them down on your hand or in your phone or whatever. But we're going to look at a couple of different passages. And the first one is in Luke chapter 14, verse 28. So in this passage, Jesus is actually telling stories. He's talking about the cost of discipleship. And he tells this really interesting story about a guy that wanted to build a tower. So here's what Jesus said in Luke chapter 14, verse 28. He said, "Suppose one of you wants to build a tower." Now, I don't know, maybe that was a thing back then. People were building towers. I have no idea. It didn't work so well for the people of Babel, but maybe they thought they could do that. So here's what Jesus said. "Suppose some of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it?" So like I said, Jesus, he's talking about the cost of discipleship. He wants people to ask themselves what it's going to take to follow him, because it's going to cost them something. And we know that, right? We know that if you're a follower of Christ, that it costs us something. And maybe for some of you, you're here, you're part of a hub, or you're checking things out. And one of the things that's kept you maybe from putting your faith and trust in Christ is that it's going to cost you something. And what Jesus is talking about here is that cost. And what he wants them to know is it's worth it. But he also gives us an idea of what planning is like, or what are some of the steps that we need to take as we're planning for success in our lives. So that's what we want to deal with. Okay, so the first step is thinking about the goal. So in that verse in Luke 14, what's the goal? It's a tower. They wanted to build a tower. And maybe there were, again, like I said, tower building competitions. I have no idea. But that's what the person was shooting for. They wanted to build a tower. So the first question that you need to answer is, what are you shooting for this summer? Like, what do you want your summer to look like? What do you want to be true of your summer? There's a guy that does a lot of kind of leadership teaching. This guy by the name of Stephen Covey most famously wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talked about the idea that we need to begin with the end in mind. When you're starting out with something, you need to know where you're going. So he says, begin with the end in mind. Have that dream or that picture of where you're going. And then that actually, that leads you, that guides you, that pulls you towards it. So the question I have for you as you start off thinking about your summer is, what kind of walk with God would you like to have this summer? In fact, how would you end this sentence? My summer will be spiritually successful if ... Like, how would you answer that? Now, if you look in Scripture, you see all kinds of examples of people that had dreams or visions for how they wanted their life to be, or how they dreamed of God using their lives. In Hebrews 12:2, the author says, "Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross." So we get this idea that Jesus had this vision of the joy set before him, and so he endured the cross. He had this vision of the joy of people that would worship him, that would submit to him, that would be about his business in the world. In Luke 19:10, it says that, "For the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost." Again, as you look at the life of Jesus, you see that his life, what he did, was propelled by that vision, by that dream that his Father had given him. In Philippians 3, Paul echoed a similar sentiment when he said in Philippians 3:13 and 14, he says, "One thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what's ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me." See, Paul, again, he had this vision, this dream of what God wanted to accomplish through him, what he wanted the end of his life to be. And if you know anything about the Apostle Paul, he came to the end of his life and he said, "I fought the fight, I've finished the race, I've kept the faith." And so the question I think we need to ask ourselves is, what does that look like for us as we finish the summer? In September, what do you want to be telling your friends about your summer? As you get back together and you're hanging out with your friends again back on campus, what do you want to be talking about? So like I said, you're going to have more time in your discussion groups if you're with a discussion group, or again, some time as you just think about it alone. But I want to give you just even a couple of seconds now to think about, how would you finish the phrase, "My summer will be spiritually successful if." What's that dream? What's the end that you're shooting for? Take a couple seconds and think about that. All right, I know that's not tons of time, but hopefully you've begun to think of some thoughts. And maybe even for some of you, it's your second summer back home or your third summer, and you've made some mistakes in the past. And one of the things you're thinking about is, I don't want to repeat those mistakes, even like Nate talked about at the beginning. I had a pretty bad summer last summer, and I don't want to repeat that. I think those are great things to think about because we want to learn from our history, learn from those mistakes. All right, so back to 14 and the tower dude. So the next thing, the guy wants to build a tower, and then Jesus said, you need to see if you have enough to complete it. And so this is our second step. We need to look at our current resources. We need to ask ourselves, what do we have to work with this summer? A couple of summers ago, my wife Jill, who you'll be hearing from, I think maybe next Tuesday, she'll do a training time on how to study the scriptures. But we took a couple of weeks. We did a European vacation, and we were in Paris, France. And we were leaving Paris to head to London, actually to see Wimbledon, which was awesome. And so we get to the metro. We're going to take the metro to get on a bus to take us to the Paris airport. I speak a little French. I was a French minor in college, but it's really rusty. But what we realized was we had spent all of our francs. We didn't have enough money to actually get a ticket to get on the metro to get to the bus to take us to the airport. And the dude that was in sort of the ticket counter where I could give him my credit card, he had bailed. He was gone. And so we didn't have what we needed to be able to get where we needed. Now, thankfully, we ran into this really sweet, nice old French man. And using my broken French, I explained I needed just a couple of francs, to get where we needed. And he donated some money to the cause, and we were off to the races. But that's your first step. You need to think about, here's where I want to go. And then the second step is, what do I have to get there? What are my assets and what are my liabilities? Now, your assets, those are the things this summer that will really help sustain your vibrancy with Christ and your relationship with him. And your liabilities, those are the pitfalls. Those are the negative things. These are the things that could derail you. So as you're thinking about your assets and liabilities, here's a couple things that I want you to keep in mind. The first thing I want you to keep in mind in terms of an asset is this, that the battle is real. Like from the moment you set foot on the first day of summer, the enemy is going to ask you to take a break from your relationship with God. And some of you have already felt that, haven't you? As you go back to your home, as you go back to old patterns, or as your familiar friend group leaves you, you're sensing that battle. So make no mistake, you're going to experience that. The battle is real. Peter gives us this advice in 1 Peter 5:8. He says, be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking for someone to devour. So make no mistake, the enemy doesn't want you to walk with God this summer. You've put yourself on the front lines of the battle simply by being a follower of Jesus. And so be aware that that's real. And the enemy knows your price. Like he knows what it's going to take for you to stop walking with God this summer. And he's going to offer that thing to you. And he probably already has. And so, maybe for some of you, it's that old friend group. And again, not that you want to totally diss your old friends, but you need to be able to come into it mindfully, knowing that maybe those old friends could draw you into some things that you don't want to be involved in. Maybe it's an old boyfriend or an old girlfriend. Boy, if I had a nickel for every time, I talked to a student in the fall, asked them how their summer was, and they just talked about they had every great plan, every intention of walking with God, and then she came along, or then he came along, and then it kind of took everything in a whole different direction. So you want to think about that. Maybe you've heard of the acronym HALT. This is something we talk a lot about when we do like men's and women's times, but it's an acronym for the 4 times when we're most susceptible to the enemy. And that's we're hungry, we're angry, we're lonely, or we're tired. And you think about that, like that's when you probably experience the spiritual battle the most. When you're physically hungry and you're susceptible to being irritated, being frustrated, being angry. And then you're angry, you're lonely, people aren't around you, or you're tired. So let me encourage you to be ready for that. Be ready for the battle because you're stepping into it from day one this summer. So that's part of your liability. Here's part of your asset. I also want you to know that even though the battle is real, your spiritual resources are infinite. Like if you're a follower of Jesus, you're a child of the King. Paul says that we're made heirs with Christ. We're co-heirs with him. We're seated with him in the heavenlies. In 1 John says that in 1 John 4:4, greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. See, if you think of a submarine, the reason a submarine doesn't cave in under the pressure of the ocean is because there's an equal pressure inside of it. And so the reason we as believers, we don't cave in is because of what's inside of us, because of who's inside of us, because the God of the universe has taken up residence in us. And so you might think you lack patience, but he has infinite patience. You lack wisdom, but God has infinite wisdom. He's great inside of you, and you can draw on his resources and his power. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take time to write out your assets and liabilities and think about, okay, what are those things that you have going for you this summer? And what are some of those things that might draw you down? I think of my first summer back from college, my family, not a believing family. They didn't walk with God. They didn't encourage me in my relationship with God at all. Like I said, I was working at that restaurant, working late nights. I think I got to work at about 3 p.m, work the dinner shift. I didn't get home till about 1 or 2 a.m. And that just can kind of throw you off. Had an old group of friends who didn't want to walk with God. I had some assets too. I had this group of Christian friends that did want to walk with the Lord. And I had time actually, before I had to go to work at 3, I had time to spend with the Lord to, read the scriptures and study and pray. So again, take just a few seconds and think about what are your assets and what are your liabilities. All right, like I said, you're going to have way more time in your discussion groups or take some time alone and think about that. But let's move on to step 3. All right, so we've got our vision. We've thought through our current situation, the assets and liabilities. And so now what you want to do is start writing a plan of action. Like, how will you see that vision accomplished? And here's what I want you to think about. Specifically, what are 3 or 4 high leverage activities that you can be involved in that will help move that vision forward? Now, when you think of high leverage activities, you're thinking about what are those things that are going to make the most difference? Like people that talk about how to get better grades in college, or experts in being a successful college student. They'll tell you that actually a high leverage activity is sitting in one of the first 3 rows of every one of your classes. Studies have shown that students that sit in one of the first 3 rows, they get better grades than those that sit in the back. I was part of the back row bunch, and my GPA definitely shows that. So think about what are those high leverage things that you can do. And one of the best guides that I found is actually in Hebrews chapter 10. And here's what the author says in verses 19 to 25. He's talking about Jesus and everything Jesus has done for us, and then he begins to apply it. And he says this. He says, since we have a great priest over the house of God, he says, let us draw near to God. And you might want to underline that where it says draw near to God, because that's a high leverage thing. It says, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, having our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promises faithful. And then he says this, and let us consider how to spur one another on toward love and good deeds. And you might want to underline that, spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. So real quick, in there, 3 high leverage things that the author talks about. First is drawing near to God. And so I want you to think about, how will you draw near to God this summer? How will you get immersed in the scriptures? God speaks to us through his word. If you want to have God speak to you, open up his word. So think about, how will you get into it? I remember my first summer back home, I realized I didn't know the Old Testament that well. And I thought, I want to read through the Old Testament, and specifically 1st and 2nd Kings. And so I spent the summer reading through those 2 books. And think about it. If you spend a summer in a book, that book will spend the summer in you. So think about, how will you immerse yourself in God's word? So how will you draw near to him? Second thing is, how will you spur one another on? See, the author is really mindful that we need each other. Like, the Christian life is not an individual sport. Like, it really is a team sport. And you realize this, you need people in your lives. So the tendency is to isolate ourselves. And when we're alone, we become very vulnerable, and our tendency is to stagnate. So the question is, how will you band together with others? And if you're part of a hub, that's awesome. Part of a great local church, that's fantastic. But I'm especially worried for those of you that are alone. So think about, what does that look like? Even maybe virtually, could you do some Google Hangouts with friends of yours, at different times? So think about, how can you be in community? And then the third thing is, he talks about that we'd spur one another on towards love and good deeds. See, Jesus talked about that we don't take a light and hide it under a basket. He taught us to pray that his will would be done on earth as it is in heaven. You see, the Christian life isn't about not sinning. It's about advancing his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. So the question is, what acts of obedience and love are going to mark your life this summer? How will you be involved wherever you are in advancing his kingdom? If Jesus is a king and he's establishing his kingdom through us, how will you be involved in that? So you might want to think about, again, are there opportunities at your local church, or again with summer crew, or maybe think about volunteering somewhere. Think about who you're going to influence for him. I think of my friend Randy, who was a lifeguard when we were in college. He went back home and he knew right away he needed to out himself as a Christian. So the first day they were having their little lifeguard meeting, and he said, hey, I'd like to have a Bible study for anybody that would be interested in joining me. We're going to meet before our shift starts, and if you want to join me, love to have you. And so he knew it was really important for him to out himself right away. And then that's how he got that group around him. And he had a few join him that summer. So maybe you want to think about that, start in a small group. So think about, what are those high leverage things that you can do where you are? And then the fourth step is just simply implement your plan. Maybe tell someone else, have them check in on you, have some accountability there. So maybe you're overwhelmed. You've heard all this and you're like, wow, okay, that's overwhelming. I need a vision. I need to think about my situation. I need these high leverage tactics. Here's an old adage I heard once. And the question is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So think about, what's your next step? Once the camera turns off tonight, what do you need to do? And I think a great first step is to talk about it with the people in your hub, or like I said, spend some time alone with the Lord and coming up with a plan. You see, Chris McCandless, he spent 132 days in the wilderness and he didn't survive. Well, if I've done my math right, in about 110 days from today, classes will start again for those of you on the fall semester. And my prayer is that you wouldn't just have survived in your walk with God, but you really will have thrived. And that as you gather back with your friends in September, you're going to hear story after story, and you're going to tell story after story of how God used you this summer. But it won't happen unless your want to is attached to a how to. So that's the question that I have for you. How will you do it? How will you make that dream become a reality? I know you can, and I know you will. So let me pray for you. Lord, thanks for this opportunity. And it really is fun thinking about, we got people in New York and Hong Kong and Wisconsin and Missouri and Texas and California, all over the place being a part of this. And I pray that, I pray for a real successful summer. I pray that people would thrive in their relationship with you and that people would come to know you. I know there's people that are part of the hubs that are just even checking out Christianity. And so I pray that this would be a rich summer with them, even to figure it out and kind of get their questions answered and learn more about what it means to serve you and to follow you in your ways. So Lord, we love you. Help us, Lord, to come up with a plan to attach our want to a how to this summer. We pray this in your name. Amen. Thanks, you guys.
A message from your Summer Connect admin. Please turn your microphone on.
Gotcha. Okay, let's try this again. I was just saying thank you so much, Bob. I really see how, and just I'm encouraged about how practical your message is. If you want to see something happen, you simply need to make some steps and do it, as Nike would say. So, speaking of seeing things happen, we have what's called Faith Steps Friday, and I love to say in my Oprah singing voice, Faith Steps Friday. So Faith Steps Friday is really just a time where you do exactly that. You take steps of faith. And we really want to see that, as Bob was saying, that we are able to have those high level, high impact activities. And this week's challenge will actually be a listening skill. So let me back up and say that each week we'll give you a faith step to take. And with that, you'll have Friday or really until the next time we're together to really try and do that. This week's is specifically focused on listening. And I don't know if you've ever had a friend who, whenever you talk to them, you can tell they are 100% engaged in what you're saying. They ask follow-up questions. They repeat back what you said. And you really leave those conversations kind of feeling encouraged and heard and listened to and known. And so when we think of our faith step for this week, it's all about listening. One particular question that we want you to try and ask a friend as they're talking to you, or a neighbor, or whomever it is that God may put on your heart, is tell me more about that. So they could be talking to you about whatever it is, and then you just simply interject with, tell me more about that. And if you say that, I guarantee that they'll really feel encouraged, listened to, and who knows, we're praying that God would really open up an opportunity for you to really kind of share more about who he is, or really just to even show his character by showing that God is a God who cares and who listens. So that's the Faith Step Friday challenge for this week. One of the things we want you to do, as we're a group of people who are connecting, is we want you to think about who you want to connect with and have those conversations with. But we also want you to tell someone in your hub group or part of your movements or your ministries who it is that you're hoping to talk to over the next week. So that's Faith Step Friday. And one other announcement we have is Toolbox Tuesday. So we love the alliteration over here. But as Bob mentioned, his wife has actually put together a video. It's a pre-recorded video. And we would love for you all just to take that, to watch it. We'll send that out via email. And Jill Foose is featured in that video with some resources that will be really helpful for you. So definitely gather your group together, watch this video together, and kind of discuss it and see how it can benefit you, how you can use these different Toolbox Tuesdays, to really benefit you. Next week, everyone in your location say next week. Next week, we have a real treat. We'll have Renee and Donnie Begay, and they're actually the leaders of nations. And they minister and they reach out to students and faculty of First Nation descent. And so we'll have them with us, kind of sharing with us a little bit from their heart. So you definitely want to tune in for that. So lastly, it's summertime. It's a time to celebrate, and we have some great prizes that we want to give away. But y'all know we don't give stuff away for free. So you have to do something to get something. This isn't the gospel. Sorry. But we have prizes to give away. And really what it is that we want to hear from you. We want to know how to best serve you. And so we're doing a survey, and you can simply get the survey link by texting. See if you can see this. Texting summer 17 to the number 85005. Again, text summer 17 to 85005. So when you do that, you'll get a link for a survey. It's super short. You can even do it right now. It'll ask you a few questions. And one of the last questions is really important, especially if you haven't been receiving weekly email updates. You'll want to make sure to answer that last question appropriately. So we have different prizes. Three people will actually win an Amazon gift card when we do our drawing. So make sure to text summer 17 to 85005. Do the survey, get the link, do the survey, and be entered into a chance to win a $75 gift card to Amazon.com. You can get books, you can get games, you can get all sorts of stuff with $75. You can even buy my groceries if you want. I'll give you my address. But nevertheless, that's all we have for today. Make sure you do that, and we'll see you next week. We've really enjoyed our time with you today, and have a great evening. Enjoy.